it's Carol with Carol B Crafts. Today we'll be making this cute little flying pig card, and the stamps come from this little Piggy stamp set. And I made this card for our weekly theme in our Cut Stamp Create Club. The weekly theme is country, and I thought this looked kind of country. And if you'd like to join the Cut Stamp Create Club, you can become a member simply by making a purchase with choosing me as your demonstrator, and then I can add you to our Facebook group where we share the projects that we make. And if you use the host code when you make your purchase, that's available on my blog, www.carolbcrafts.com, you can qualify for customer rewards. Let's get started on making our card. So to make this card, we're going to start with a piece of the Wood Textures DSP. This is a white. It has like a distressed look to it. That comes from the Wood Textures DSP collection that Stampin' Up! Offers. It's this one right here. And this is also available through my customer rewards program as well. So check out my blog, www.carolbcrafts.com, so that you can get the details on how to get this free with a purchase using the current host code on my blog. So this is going to be used for the fence. So what we want to do is get our cutter. I didn't want to do this ahead of time because I wanted you to see it. So we have our paper trimmer, and we're going to, I want to use this part here. So we're going to cut first a piece that's 3/8 of an inch. And I'm going to use, let me get in the camera, I'm going to use this part to measure. So I've got it here at 3/8 of an inch. Cut that. And then I'm going to cut 1/4 of an inch. And now we're going to cut 3 inches, and I want to use this part here. I like it better than this part that has a lot of the distressed. So I'm going to cut it, turn it and cut it at 3 inches. So the pieces we have are 3 inches by 6 inches. And we have a strip that's 3/8 of an inch by 6 inches, and a strip that's 1/4 of an inch by 6 inches. We have a regular standard A2 size card, 8.5 by 5.5, scored at 4 1/4 and folded in half, and that's our thick whisper white. Then we have our powder pink panel that's going to go on this, and it is 5 1/8 by 3 7/8. And then on top of that will be our, this is the watercolor paper that Stampin' Up! Sells, and it is 5 by 3 3/4, and that will go on top of this. Then for our inside sentiment, we'll need a panel of powder pink, 4 3/4 by 3.5, and then our inside sentiment whisper white panel will be 4 1/2 by 3 1/4. So we're going to go ahead and do our stamping first. So we'll set aside our wood cutting, and we're going to be using this little Piggy stamp set, and this is a darling little stamp set. I think everyone is just in love with it. At first, when I first saw it, I thought, pigs, I'm not really a pig person, but they're just so cute, and I've seen so many cute projects with it. I decided I needed to get it as well. So I tried several different things. I tried cutting it, fussy cutting it, stamping it, and so this is the best thing I came up with, is to use the watercolor technique using ink pads and the aqua painter brushes. Now the stamps that we're using, we're going to use She Believed She Could, So She Did, and then also the little cloud. Okay, the first thing we're going to, this first stamping that we're going to do is the pig, and we're going to, the pig with the wings, and we're going to mask off this part here, which says, she believed that she could, so she did. And we're going to use masking, we're going to use washi tape to mask. I have some old washi tape here. But I'm going to mask off the part that says she believed that she could. So then after I've got that masked, I'm going to ink up my stamp. And I may use my Stamp-A-Majig, so because sometimes because the watercolor paper is textured, it doesn't, you have to stamp twice to get a good crisp image. So I'm going to take that washi tape off, and I'm going to stamp in the center with her wing just above, about 1/4 of an inch from the top. Hold it down. Okay, so that's good enough. So I won't need to use my Stamp-A-Majig for this. Now we're going to do some clouds, and I want to do 2 clouds here and 1 cloud there. And one thing I found about this stamp is you want to make sure that you don't get any ink on the edges, because if you do, it's going to show up when you stamp. So I'm going to put 1 cloud there. And put another one here. And then I'll put 1 over here in this corner here. Alright, we'll just let that dry for a little bit. I've already got ink there. While that's drying, we'll do the inside sentiment. And that is, she believed she could. And it's so she did is on the inside. So we will ink up our so she did. Ink it up really good. And then we're just going to put it wherever we want. I'm going to put it in the top right corner here. So she did. And I think I might add a couple more little clouds just for interest. There we go. And then the last thing we're going to stamp is we need a scrap piece of paper. And I don't know if I've told you this, Whisper White. This is just a scrap. It's 3 3/4 by 3. And we're going to be stamping our sentiment, which we'll be using this punch here, this label punch, and I'll put the name of it on the screen because I can't remember. But we're going to use this to stamp out our sentiment. Now our sentiment is on this stamp here with the pig, but we can go ahead and stamp it because it's not going to make a difference that the pig is there. When we go to stamp it, we can stamp it without it being a problem, as you can see. So we'll go ahead and stamp it with this. She believed she could. So we're done with our stamping now. We can put our basic gray ink away. Now the next thing I guess we'll do is color our pig, and we're not going to color our clouds, but we're going to color the grass down here and the blue and then the pig. And we're going to use powder pink for the body of our pig. And I have a little piece of, this is the top of my Stampin' Mist. I put some water in it, and then we're going to use our aqua brush, a dry aqua brush, aqua painter. If your tips fan out, all you have to do is get them wet. And I have a piece of paper towel here. I'm just kind of drying them off and making a point and just twisting just a little bit. And you can get your point back that way. Now, so we're going to use powder pink, and we're going to squeeze it to get some of the ink on the top, like that. We're going to turn it over, get our brush, get some water on our brush, get it good and wet, because what we want to do is we want to turn this ink into more fluid, like a wash kind of thing, not so thick. Like straight ink is really dark and thick and hard to work with. Where this, with the water, it will be easier to spread and have a more even color when we put it on the pig. So we're really just mixing that up. Make sure the stuff on your brush is well mixed. Try to get it into the center there. And then you have to work a little quick, but not so quick that you have to make mistakes. And don't worry about getting too much of a coverage on it, because it will dry, and it will actually dry darker than it looks when you put it on. Try to avoid the ink as well, because it does have a tendency to fan out the ink, the gray ink, if you get it too wet. It's a little tricky around the ears, but not impossible. Like I said, you don't want to get it too wet, or it starts to do funky things. And if you run out of ink, just squeeze it again and add a little more water if you don't have enough to cover the whole body of the pig. And you can actually go over it a second time if you want. Just don't get it too saturated, because even though it's watercolor paper, it will peel if it gets too wet. So yeah, that second coat really helps to make a difference. I'm really trying to avoid the gray ink though, because you can see in some areas it's starting to fan out. Okay, so we just have a little bit here. Now I'm going to do the wings in a different pink. I'm going to use pink Pirouette for the wings. Just getting some of this detail here. And I can't forget the little tail. Now that's really tricky, but not impossible. Now for the snout, I'm going to squeeze this again. And I'm going to do the snout in full strength as much as possible. Because full strength ink is a little harder to work with. Okay, so we're done with our powder pink. I'm going to clean my brush off a little bit, but I don't need to worry about it too much because I'm going to be using pink Pirouette next. So I'm going to do the same thing, squeeze, get some ink there in the bottom, and get my water on my brush, add some water to the pink Pirouette ink. Make sure the brush gets well watered and even, the ink is even. Okay, and then I'm going to do my wings. I wanted the wings a little bit lighter pink, so that's why I chose to do the powder pink. And again, you have to be very careful when you do the wings, not to do them too much or get them too wet. And if they get a little wet, they will dry. You just don't want the ink to fan out. Okay, we're done with her wings. I'll clean my brush. Now the little hoofs, I'm going to actually use my basic gray watercolor pencil. We sell, Stampin' Up! Sells a set of watercolor pencils. And I'm going to just put just a little bit of color there on the hoofs. And the watercolor pencils don't require a lot of water to blend the color. What I'm actually going to do is get it wet, and then I'm going to come back in with this, and it seems to accept the color a lot better if it's wet. That's what I've found. Okay, so we colored the little hoofs. Clean our brush off. Next we're going to do the grass, and for the grass I'm going to use two colors. I'm going to use Wild Wasabi and Old Olive. We'll start with Wild Wasabi first. We'll do get our brush wet. Oops, I gotta put the Wild Wasabi in my container. Okay, so I gotta squeeze it. Get the ink in the bottom there. Well, it's nice and juicy, so I got lots of ink. Get my water, mix my water in there. This is going to be for our grass. And we're going to do this about, the grass is going to be about an inch from the bottom. So I'll go ahead and mark that inch. And then we're just going to do like little grassy like movements here. Grass is not even straight across, so we're just going to kind of like making little X's. And we don't want to do it too much because, I mean, we want to leave some white space so we can come back later and do some of our Old Olive. Fill it in with Old Olive. So our grass has two tones. And then I'm just going to pick it up and do it down here at the bottom, even though that's not going to show probably once we get our fence up. Okay, so that's part of our grass. We'll clean off our brush. Now we're going to take our Old Olive and squeeze that. Get our brush wet and then just move that ink around till it is well blended and evenly colored all around. And then now we're going to just take our Old Olive and try to fill in those spaces that were left, the white spaces. If you wanted to use a different color green, you could. Okay, so that's our grass. Clean my brush off. And I think I'm actually going to get some fresh water because that's actually looking kind of green. Okay, next we're going to do our blue sky, and we're going to use soft sky for that. So I'm going to squeeze some ink into our top. There we go. Well, maybe just a little bit more because we've got a lot of sky to cover. Hopefully that'll be enough. Alright, so bring in our brush, get some water here in our soft sky, mix it around really well. We want to avoid the clouds and the pig, and it doesn't have to be a perfect coverage. This is just, watercolor is kind of like suggestive. It's only supposed to suggest to the mind the color. Okay, now we are ready to do our fence. Now for our fence, and I'm seeing that this is bowing a little bit here. For our fence, we're going to put the 1/4 inch here at the, well, kind of at the bottom. Let's see what we want to do here. We want to cover up the edges of the grass. I think that helps to make it look more natural. So we'll put some snail on this, on the back. And we'll put it here to cover up the top of the grass. And then this one we're going to put at the bottom here, about right there. And I'm going to use this silicone sheet because this is actually, make sure, this is actually thinner than the snail that I'm using. So I'm going to get that snail towards the back because some of it came to the front. You could use glue. It might actually be better to use glue. Okay, so those are our rails, our fence rails. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and take our snips and cut off the edges. You can see this where I made a mess before. I made a boo-boo right here. So we're going to cut these off even with the edge. And now we're ready for our fence posts, for our picket fence. And what we're going to do is we're going to take our punch and we're just going to go in as far as we can and punch. Then move out towards the edge and punch again. I'm going to cut this so that we can get access to this part. of the paper. So before we put these on, I'm going to go ahead and take some smoky slate. Now this is optional if you don't want to do this. I'm going to take some smoky slate ink and a piece of, this is a eye makeup dauber. And I'm just going to get some ink on here and go around the edge. Try not to get too far away from the edge. I just want to make something to give it a little more definition. So I'm going to do all of these. Okay, I got all of those colored on the sides with inked with the smoky slate. And now I'm going to get my soft sky sponge, and I just wanted to show you this is how I store my ink daubers and sponges. This is an embroidery box, DMC embroidery thread, but I use it, I mark my sponges and then I put everything with that color in that little square. So this is my soft sky sponge. I'm going to sponge around the edges of the sky to give it a little more definition. So I'm done with my soft sky. Next we're going to put on the little fence posts, and I think it looks better not to have it away from the edge but actually have it starting on the edge. And we're going to put these on with glue. I think that's the easiest thing. So we're just going to put dots of glue where we think that it needs to go, where we want to put our, looks like my glue is kind of dried up. So I'm going to put it so it's kind of over the edge there. And I want my fence to be kind of crooked. I don't want it to be, them to be all the same height. And I don't want them to be even going in the same direction. I want it to look kind of like an old fence that's been there a while. Okay, once we give that a chance to dry, we'll put that aside. We'll go ahead and start building our base. We'll have our card base here. I'm going to make that a little bit more crisp of a fold so it stays flat while we put our panel on. We'll go ahead and put this on our inside sentiment, on our inside panel. Go ahead and put it on the inside of the card. This card is for my daughter, who's going through a little bit of a life transition period right now, and she needs something to perk her up, to let her know that she can do it. Okay, so we're going to take our snips and we're going to go ahead and trim off this part here. And then we're going to put this on our front of our card. And I'm going to use lots of snail because this is a heavy textured paper, this watercolor paper. So I'm going to use lots of, I'm not going to skimp. I'm going to get close to the edge too so that it stays flat. I might get a little too close. Have to flip some of it back. That should hold it down. Now I'm going to use my waxy strip from my mini glue dots to put this in place. Oops. It's kind of hard to do because the paper is wanting to curl up. Okay, I think that's good enough. Push it down really good. Maybe even turn it over and push it down in there so it gets a good grip. Okay, so that's most of our card. Now all we have left to do is put our "She believed she could, so she did." We'll get our pink Pirouette ink, not our powder pink ink, out again, and we're going to get our dauber for our pink ink. So just want to go around this with my powder pink ink to give it a little more definition. Probably should have done this earlier. Alrighty, now it's ready to put on our card. And let's see, how should we put that on? Probably with some snail, I think. Just put a little bit of snail here on the back. Use my waxy strip to guide where I want it. And I think that looks good right about there. She believed she could, so she did. I don't normally do a lot of watercoloring, but I found that's probably the best way to use the pig image is to watercolor it. So I hope you'll give this a try, and I hope that you're successful at it. If not, just keep trying. Thanks for joining me, and have a great day. Bye now.